The bent plum trees set in the square of rough grass behind the blackbird inn were as white on this mild February morning as though it were May. Ordinarily their branches were as black with age as they were twisted by sea winds, for beyond the hawthorn hedge was the marsh, across which gales from the north and east could sweep unhindered, and beyond the marsh was the sea. It was neither blossom nor snow which covered the wide-reaching boughs in that hazy sunshine, but a gossamer light veil of frost which lay upon every branch and twig, and penciled each with a delicate tracery of white. Nicholas Drury, opening the door which gave upon the garden, could see that the rime-covered boughs were not stirred by any breath of wind, and that even the brown expanse of the marsh lay unrippled by any breeze in the stillness of the winter dawn. Across the tops of the dun and yellow, frost-tipped grasses, he could see the slate-gray water with white riffles where the slow swells curved and broke about Pelman Island and along the rocky reach of Branscombe Head. The horizon was faintly blurred, as though the mist which had lain over the garden all night and had gathered in airy lines of white upon the trees and grass, was now returning whence it had come. He stood upon the doorstone, a tall boy of 19, well knit, with brown hair which, at the back of his head, never lay quite smooth. He was looking across the garden and with a glance vague, at first, then growing intent with surprise and curiosity. Finally he passed his hand across his eyes as though to rub away the obscuring weariness of the night just past, and looked again. He saw that the grass below the plum trees was covered with frost also, each yellow blade beaded with the same perishable whiteness which a touch would destroy. A touch had indeed dislodged it at regular intervals. For all across the lawn leading up from the direction of the marsh was a line of striding footsteps. So faintly were they printed upon the shining surface that at one moment the boy was quite sure he could make out each separate footfall reaching from the far corner of the hedge to the little bow window of the room out of which he had come. Yet at the next instant it seemed as though the marks were only the shadows of tree and hedge, or merely a deceiving trick of the sparkling rime. He could only stare and wonder and think, first that he saw them and then that he did not. Behind him the house was slowly awaking from the troubled slumber of night to the work of the day. Footsteps and voices were going up and down in the passage, and in the stone-flagged kitchen where a lattice window was thrown open. But the voices, for the most part, spoke in whispers, and the footsteps either hesitated or hurried. Once there was the sharp clatter of a plate dropped upon a stone floor, and a man's startled exclamation cut short in the middle as though in recollection of the great need for quiet. Certainly the sounds had little to do with the bustling arrival of travelers. There was nothing of the laughter, the hum of voices, the orders called and the hastening feet which belonged to the ordinary humming activity of a busy inn. Although it was well situated with its front door upon the very edge of the post road leading north from Branscombe, and its back garden looking upon a broad blue reach of sea, custom was no longer very great at the Blackbird. Travelers indeed were very few anywhere during these difficult times in the years just following the War of the Revolution. Once the highway leading north from Boston had been busy with mail riders and coaches, with pack horses and creaking carts, for Branscombe was no inconsiderable port and had been known for its harbor and its shipbuilding throughout the colony of Massachusetts. Yet today there was nothing of this, only the stirring of uneasy feet and a sense of danger and disquiet in every sound drifting out from door or Suddenly a man spoke in the passage. His voice was deep, with, under its low tone, a wavering edge of desperate anxiety. He has passed safely through the night, but what is the day to bring? The more softly spoken words of a woman followed. Ah, what can save us now? Nicholas, hearing them so close to the door, called, though almost below his breath, Phoebe, Caleb, see what is here. They came out together upon the step. Caleb Harmon, a broad-shouldered man with a gray head, but with a ruddy open face of undiminished health and strength. Phoebe, with her smooth hair, placid gray eyes, and gentle expression, was an odd contrast to his breezy vigor. There is a storm brewing, she said as she stepped outside. She was shading her eyes with her hand to look across the garden, for the sun, just then, was bright behind the haze. Then both were intently silent for a moment, for it was plain that they also were staring at the footprints in the white frost. As I live, Nicholas heard Phoebe say to herself in a wondering whisper, here is good fortune come to this house at last. I always knew that it must return out of the sea, whither it was carried away. Good fortune? Repeated Caleb. You are over-hopeful, Phoebe, to read any sign this. It is high time that some better chance should come our way. But it is my belief that all good luck has fled from this household forever. Nicholas looked down at his shabby breeches, then glanced up quickly at the window of the room just overhead before he voiced his agreement with Caleb. It is true that we have need of good fortune, he said, but how can it come out of the marsh where no man dwells and from the sea where no ship lies? It is more than likely that these are the footsteps of a thief who stole up to look in at the window and went trudging away again when he saw how little there was within. If it was someone peering in, said Caleb, his anxious tone lightening a little, I believe that I can tell just what it was that he saw. If he came toward morning, as the sharpness of these footmarks would seem to show, if he stood close to the window, and look, he must have done so, for there are the two prints of boot soles in the soft earth of Phoebe's tulip bed. If he pressed his face against the glass, I think he observed a young gentleman with rumpled hair, sitting beside a table all set about with ledgers, accounts and legal documents. And he saw that the same gentleman had grown so weary of adding and subtracting figures which all told the same sorry tale, that he had laid before him a fair sheet of paper and, with dawn coming in at the window and with the candle flame burning colorless in the daylight, he was drawing the picture of a ship. Did you see? Stammered Nicholas, and then chuckled in spite of himself, in unison with Caleb's deep rumble of laughter. I would require small wit to see from your hollow eyes that you had not slept, and I would need even less to guess whither your thoughts would stray before the night was over.